pesticides used in the USA are for cotton. And these shirts are organic cotton. They don't use any pesticides, so there's no runoff into the rivers. There's no danger to the plants and to the animals. And you can wear these and they feel great. And so I'm giving these to you, and all you have to do when you put it on is just remember to give something back to the earth. Do something for the earth. And so in my field, I can do all kinds of things like that, where I can make contact with people. Because I study what you say, and I know that if I started going down that road with them, that they would get antsy and distracted, because all of the facts tend to make people glaze over. But if I could put a beat to it, and then crunch it at them really loud, they get immersed in it and they start singing it over and over again when they go home. And they get the facts through that, one way or another, some little message. And so that's what I try to do everywhere I go, to make it work that way. And also, you know, building on what you've said, it's such a great opportunity for the business sector and for the world that we are turning it around.
Yeah.
And the politicians, like you said, the politicians, we need to make them accountable and make them respond to what we're saying, to the reality. But behind it all, there is a force moving against progress, which I believe needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And that is the corporate control and the corporate influence on our political system.
Yeah.
And that is something I know you've spoken about to me, we've spoken about a little bit, but I see it as being a huge thing where we have some young man or young lady that we believe in, that we elect to go to the Senate or to go to the House of Representatives or even to the presidency. And we see how they are influenced and changed, and the power becomes such that they need the support of the corporations. They have to make these deals to stay in power.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, Neil, and let me make just a couple points about exactly that. This country's, you know, it sounds falsely prideful to say the greatest country in the world, but it is. And yet, all of us who are Americans, I think, are feeling a little heavy-hearted right now because of the influence of money in politics. And we became the greatest country by making better decisions than any other country for a long time because we used the wisdom of crowds. The Constitution allowed us to collect the wisdom of the people and sort through it in the democratic processes and so forth. So when our country was founded, it was the age of the printing press, and individuals were kind of on an even basis. They could get into the conversation and print real easy. And if they had something to say that people agreed with, others would jump in and say, yeah, I agree with that. But starting in the latter part of the 20th century, the last third of the 20th century, television just pushed newspapers down. And a lot of newspapers going broke, another one closed shop in San Francisco this week. And they're still around, but television's been dominant. And they've got gatekeepers. Individuals can't get into the conversation on television very easy. Now, you've got to have millions of dollars to buy ads. And the corporations will have ads, and some of them are fine. But politicians learn that the only way they can get enough money to put their ads on at campaign time is to get it from special interests or very wealthy people. So the average congressman now spends an average of 5 hours per day begging for money on the telephone and in cocktail parties, and they don't have time to do what they're supposed to be doing under the Constitution. But here's where the hope is. Here's where the hope is. And Salesforce is a part of this whole big change. And that is the internet is going to be even more powerful than television, and the internet is, this year for the first time, ad dollars onto the internet crossed over ad dollars on television. And already you see individual bloggers and individuals on social media really beginning to make a difference. And individuals on the internet, same as with the printing press, it's easy to join the conversation and to use facts and knowledge hold people to account. So I'm optimistic about this, but we need to speed this up, and climate is the way to do it. And one other point, where the economy is concerned, which you mentioned. Everybody knows that the way we got out of the Great Depression was mobilizing for World War II. Well, now the world is still struggling to escape from the Great Recession. Would it be nice if we had a huge project where we needed to mobilize people around the world to do jobs that couldn't be automated or outsourced to other countries, like retrofitting buildings and installing solar panels and so forth? Well, we've got a major project like that. And we need to do this to save the future of human civilization. But in the doing, we'll put people to work, get more money into the hands of families that need spending money, and get the economy growing again.
Yes, that's great. I hope we can do that, and I hope that we can address what's going on with the corporations that are paying for all of these things, that make it so that it is difficult to get around what they're doing. And we have laws that make it legal for them to do this. Well, Citizens United law, even though we overturned it with majority of votes, majority of Americans did not want Citizens United, it's still there. And that was wrong. I think, you know...
well, in my experience, when the majority of Americans vote a certain way, it doesn't always guarantee that.
I understand. You're the person Matt, too.
Let me share a hopeful story about people fighting back against improper activities in the political system by corporations. There's this woman in Atlanta, Georgia, who's one of the founders of one of the biggest tea parties in the country. And she heads the Atlanta Tea Party. And she decided to put a solar panel on her roof because it was going to save her money. Okay, so Georgia Power has the monopoly in electricity sales in Georgia. And they're part of this group called the American Legislative Exchange Council. You know about this, the Koch brothers self-finance it. And so they've been getting nervous about these solar panels, and they've introduced legislation in state legislatures to put a tax on anybody who installs solar panels on their roof. And so they came, like they have done in the past, to the Tea Parties and said, hey, we need you to help us get this through. And this woman that headed the Atlanta Tea Party just put a solar panel on her roof. She said, what? You want me to pass a law that will put a tax on me for the solar panel? She said, I don't think so. So the Atlanta Tea Party partnered with the Sierra Club and formed a new organization in Georgia named, wait for it, the Green Tea Party. And here's the better part of the story. They defeated the legislation. And in 33 out of the 34 states where it's been introduced, most of them with a Republican majority in the state legislature, they've defeated it there too. The Republicans, Democrats, doesn't matter. When people feel strongly enough that they want the power in their own hands, and if they want to have solar panels on their roof, they don't want some monopoly telling them they can't do it. We need to fight for the future of this country. We need to fight for the future of our world. I believe that.
That's a great story, and there's places to address this everywhere. And since I'm a car guy, I'm going to go to the interstate system, and the federal interstate system, paid for by our taxes, paid for by Americans, just like the $4.8 billion that goes to the fossil fuel industry every year, paid for by us. That's who our money comes from us, and it all goes to them, and then they advertise human energy. They advertise how beautiful everything is. They have beautiful people that are out on TV every morning on the Sunday shows and throughout the week, telling their story of wonderfulness of oil and fossil fuels and how it's the future, and we have to have it and everything. We see all of that. There really isn't. I'm really full of it on that one. That's true. Let me rethink. I got to recalibrate that.
Sorry to throw you off track.
That's okay.
I went to your concert recently, and wow, unbelievable.
Well, I was just thinking of something that I could, with my mind, it comes
Talk about cars,
comes
interstates.
back. Yes, yes.
Interstates.
Federal interstates, no renewable energy available at any pump, anywhere on the interstate system. How can we turn around this country when the corporations are controlling the laws that get made, and we don't have legislation coming from the top down, from people leading this country, saying we need to have one renewable fuel pump for every 6, so that we can start lowering the carbon on the highways and give people a freedom of choice of what they want to burn in their cars. Why don't we do that? Wouldn't that make it right to offer freedom of choice? And then wouldn't Ford and GM and Chrysler and all the other companies that sell us cars, Toyota, wouldn't they go, we have to make a car that's as smart as Henry Ford's car was in 1918, where you flip a switch and you go from ethanol to gasoline, or you can burn, or a car that's smart enough to know what kind of fuel it's burning, so that it can automatically adjust. Then people would have a choice about what they're burning in their cars, and they have a choice. But that hits the bottom line right away of the big oil companies that we subsidize, that are advertising. So they're coming at us from a couple of different ways, and we have to, in my view, we really have to fight back at the forces that are slowing down our revolution. There are forces that are making it harder for us to get this off the ground. All of the things that you talked about, they're so brilliantly stated, and yet we have the deniers. And I think the deniers we need to just gently, with love, because love is all important to everything. This is where the love, I love Earth. I love the animals. The birds, the way they play, the way they flitter around, and the horses, the way they run around and kind of dance together. That's what we all should aspire to be like. So we don't want to kill them. I don't want a planet that does not welcome them. We want them here. We want them to live. We want to live with them, and we want to have love and see the love and share it. That's what I found that really, even though I'm really mad and really angry, at the top is love. And so I temper everything I say with that, and I look around and try to make a difference in many different ways.
I don't think there's anybody, I know a bunch of musicians, but I know the culture, and I don't think there's anybody in the world that has the position of respect you have in the music community. These young rockers, the older they look up to you, and partly because you're authentic and you speak from your heart. I wanted to pick up on something you said about the deniers, and then make one other quick point. There's a new movie coming out later this year called Merchants of Doubt. There's a book out by that title. And what it shows and documents is that the same people that put together the tobacco industry program for trying to hide what the doctors were saying about smoking and lung cancer are now working to try to hide the science about global warming. And remember when the Surgeon General's report came out on smoking and lung disease back in 1964, great report, really well done, but then not all but most of the tobacco companies hired actors and dressed them up as doctors and put them in front of cameras reading into the teleprompter saying, "Hi, I'm a doctor, and I want you to know there's absolutely no problem smoking cigarettes. It won't hurt you at all. I smoke myself." And for 40 years, they spent millions of dollars a year trying to fool people into thinking that what the doctors had warned them about wasn't really true. Well, now, a lot of these very same people are saying that the climate scientists are lying to us and that they are making up the science. And it's insulting to our intelligence. They're trying to play us for fools. But what excites me so much about the businesses that are leading the way out of this is that when we get the market signals right, when we get these new technologies that are cheaper than, that are better than, then the market starts working for us. But final point, if we could just get an accurate market signal on the cost of carbon, then every business would be in a position to make accurate calculations about profit and loss and what the relative benefits of staying with old dirty coal or going to clean solar and wind are all about. Now China has just put in place some restrictions on coal. They've just put in place a so-called cap and trade program in 7 jurisdictions, and they've said it's going to be nationwide next year. India's just raised the tax on coal. And a lot of other countries are doing the same thing. If the United States joins that movement, then it will become unstoppable. And it can happen. I use the example of the gay guys waiting for pizza. If somebody had told me 5 years ago that the United States was going to be a place where gay marriage was legal in most every jurisdiction, the overwhelming majority of people would have changed their mind and say, oh, if God made somebody that way, God couldn't mean for a person to be persecuted all his or her life because of the way God made them. I mean, that's been a big shift in a relatively short period of time. And when any question is ultimately resolved into a choice between what's right and what's wrong, the outcome is foreordained. There's some bad people in the world, but not all that many. The vast, the huge majority of people, given a choice between right and wrong, are going to make the right choice. And when they hear it in your music and they start dancing to it, then it becomes truly unstoppable. I appreciate your leadership.
Thank you. Thank you. There's so many places where I look and try to see a way to bring people along to understand what it is that you've so eloquently explained here with your graphs and with all your figures, which are just an amazing collection of information. And the things that I saw in your house, like when we saw was the Lincoln Monument, or was it in Washington?
Oh yeah, Jefferson Memorial, yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, inside there, and suddenly some storm shows up from nowhere, and it's like from hell. You can't believe what's going on outside of this. And the shot is amazing, and I really hope that you make another one of those movies, because we could use a little update. I think we could use an update. I'd like to see, listen to that. I'd like to see what you're seeing now. It's not about, hey, I was right, obviously. It's about what can we do? How can we change? How can we make this different? How can people come to get behind this? And how can we stop the forces that are against us?
Yeah.
And many different things, many different ways of seeing it. What's going on? Like I mentioned the fuel stations, and why can't we have these renewable fuel pumps, 1 for every 6 at these gigantic stations? Why can't we have that? Why are there laws that say that you can't have biodiesel below the ground because it's dangerous if it leaks out of the tank? That stuff that comes out from the plants is going to hurt the earth. And we have Congress who passed that. That's a law that got passed. Now why, if you have any doubt of what's behind all these votes, that should be a great indicator. When we have petrodiesel and petrogasoline and everything underneath the pavement at a gas station, yet if someone wants to sell biodiesel, they have to store it above ground in tanks that everybody can see. Where do you think that came from, and how can we change that? Those are the kind of things that they're so obvious to me. They make me crazy that we can't take control of our democracy back. That these things have happened.
Well, the final thing I'd like to say is that I'll just close my part of this with one final story. I think that all these fights and all these controversies would come into focus if we decided to make this a major goal. And we should make it a major goal. I remember when I was 13 years old, President John F. Kennedy announced the goal of putting a person on the moon and bringing him back safely in 10 years. And boy, I was so thrilled by that. And I remember the adults in that day and time a lot of them said, oh, that's going to cost so much money, that's a terrible, dumb idea, we shouldn't do that. But 8 years and 2 months later, Neil Armstrong set foot on the surface of the moon. And the moment he did so in Houston at NASA's Mission Control, there was a great cheer that went up. And the average age of the systems engineers in that room was 26 years old, which means their average age when they heard that challenge was 18. And I think today's 18-year-olds and today's young generation and all the rest of us are ready for a big, major challenge that will lift our hearts, lift the economy, accomplish a worthy goal. We can do this. It is possible. I hope everybody here will join Neil and me and Mark Benioff and Salesforce.com in helping to lead the charge on this. Thank you very much.
Please thank Al Gore. Please thank Al Gore. Just beyond my expectation, and we're going to bring Neil Young back up on stage here in 1 second. We're going to do a little bit of a, I think, a set change. I think we're going to keep the chairs up here, or we're going to take them down. Okay, well, we'll find out what happens with the chairs. We don't know what's going to happen with them yet. Whatever happens with the chairs is what is supposed to happen with the chairs, and that's all we're going to know. So, I don't know how many people have been down to the trade show floor at Dreamforce so far. Raise your hands. Yeah, isn't that a great show down there? It's amazing. And down on the show, there is something incredible going on, which is the launch of an amazing new consumer music product called Pono. For years, I've been hearing from Neil, and as all of us have, that the music industry has changed. But the number one thing that has changed about the music industry is that when we, the consumers of the music of these great artists, when we receive that music, we're not getting all of it. Neil, I think, said that he used to be a fan of Picasso, but now Picasso has been taken over by a big computer company, and he's not a fan of Picasso anymore. And I think what he was referring to is what happened when the music industry turned into a whole bunch of MP3 files. And those MP3 files were just kind of a subset of the incredible music and the fidelity of the music that was being recorded by these artists. I think we all remember when we were kids and we used to sit there, we used to get these great vinyl albums by Neil and all the great artists, and there were these books that were in the vinyl albums, and we would sit there with our phonographs and we would be reading the vinyl albums while we were listening to music. Do you remember those days? Anyone here remember those great days? And the feeling that you had when you were listening to the music was incredible, as if the artist was there, because you were really hearing through that analog recording all the entire fidelity of the recording. Well, Neil had an idea, and his idea was to go back and get all the analog masters of every artist. Go back, find the tapes, go to all the music companies, get the original recordings, and then transform that into a deep and full digital file so that every single bit of the music would be there. Well, the interesting thing was it turned what was maybe 300 or 500K MP3 files into 50 megabyte files. Huge files, these huge files, but when you played the file, it was as if you were listening to the vinyl record. And so Neil Young has worked tirelessly on building an incredible new consumer product, and it's as if the iPod met a vinyl record for the first time. And when you turn on this incredible consumer product, and it's downstairs on the floor, and you put your headphones on, it's as if you are there in the studio with the artists. And if any of you have been on YouTube and searched on Pono Music and seen what every great musician has said about this player, it doesn't matter if it was Eddie Vedder or Stevie Wonder or whoever it was, they all said it was the finest, most amazing musical experience they ever have. I think Eddie Vedder actually said it's his new drug of choice. So that's a pretty big statement right there. I really was thrilled that Neil was here to talk to Al about the environment. They share that in such depth. And I asked Neil if he would stay and if he would talk to us now about this incredible invention that he's created. There's so few people who can cross industry with innovation. He has been recording the world's greatest music for over 40 years. He is the soundtrack of so many of our lives. But now he's created a new company, built a product, manufactured it, and completely innovated in another industry, the computer industry. And we saw him do that in automobiles 5 years ago. This is truly an amazing individual, and I'm so happy to now ask Neil to come back on stage and introduce us to Pono. Please welcome Neil Young.